Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. One of the very interesting and rewarding things about sim racing is being able to track your progress over time. Now, the idea of sim racing, first of all, the idea of simulation, well, we are trying to simulate, we are trying to emulate reality, meaning that as close as we can get from the confines of our bedrooms or wherever you might happen to be doing your racing activities, we're trying to make things as realistic as possible. We're trying to make things believable and consistent so that perhaps some of the conclusions that we can reach from our PCs or what have you might just be applicable to what's going on in the real racing world. Of course, most of us will never have the opportunity really to test our mettle on a real racetrack. However, we can test our mettle against ourselves and against each other in the sim racing world. I've done something like this in the past, taking a look at past versus present. However, I'd like to do so again, and I'd like to do it in the context of modern Formula One. I did this before with a couple of laps I had done at Monza in the F2002 many years ago, but I want to do the same here with Race Sim Studios Formula Hybrid, specifically the first Formula Hybrid, the car that put Race Sim Studio on the Assetto Corsa map, the 2017 car. The video that you're seeing in the B-roll right now is actually the first ever video that I posted on the channel using this car, and it was of my first ever run in the car. It was something completely new for the entire world. Nobody had ever driven a car quite like this one before. Of course, it was designed around the 2017 Formula One regulations, which were themselves a big change from previous years. Big wings, big slick tires, more power, more cornering performance, and at the time the FIA were saying that the cars would be at least 5 seconds a lap faster, and that was something that proved to be true. It was a complete unknown for everybody in the real world as well as for us peons in the world of sim racing. So, what I'd like to do here is compare my best lap from my first ever shakedown run in Formula Hybrid 2017, which was set all the way back on the 11th of March 2017 here at Catalunya, and compare it to what I've been able to do with the same car on the same track today in 2019. Let's take a look. Alright, so we jump on board here through the middle of lap 4. Lap 5 on this run was the fastest time that I managed. So just going through turns 8 and 9, coming down into the last big stop here on the lap, getting into the final Sector 3 complex of this altered Catalunya, altered relative to what this circuit has been in the glory days of the past. Coming up to the top of the hill, always very tricky corner there, and then coming into the Mickey Mouse chicane to end the lap. Here, still trying very much to understand what the car is going to do at low and medium speeds. Very good in high speed, as you can see here. Not quite as confident on the throttle as I could be at that point, but we now cross the line to begin lap number 5, and it is our fastest time. Note here, we're measuring in miles per hour, so you can see here with the DRS and the hybrid system engaged there, just hopping out at 205 as we go into turns 1 and 2. Turn 3. As the technology improved and we got better at running these cars in both the real world and in sim racing, we ended up taking turn 3 totally flat out for 2018. 2017 here, still a bit of a confidence lift needed there through turn 4, now coming down to turn 5, 6th gear, coming down into 2nd. Very slow corner, car tends to understeer a bit on turn in, and now hard on the power down to the lowest point on the circuit through here. Coming up through turn 6 and 7. Not bad acceleration. Now turn 8. Bit of a lift there on the apex on DRS. Pop 7th gear. Pop 8th gear. Braking at about 150 meters. Throw the car in. Pick up the apex curbing. We missed it a little bit. Now hesitating a little bit on the power there. Up in the 4th gear. Just still trying to get a sense of what I had underneath me. Again, the car very much a complete unknown. Now back down toward the end of the lap, hard over the sausage curbs there on the first apex of the chicane, but through the final element, we hook it up pretty nicely. Very hesitant on the throttle there. Again, still not quite understanding the traction envelope, but out of the final corner for a lap time now of a 126.150, and that was the fastest lap that I had during this session. Right, so now the interesting part of this starts. We know that this was my first ever run in this car, complete sight unseen, no idea what this thing would end up doing in the long run. And in the real world, Formula One preseason testing had just concluded upon the release of this car from Race Sim Studio. So we had limited information, even from the real world, in terms of what we could expect a car like this to behave like. So there was a lot to be learned, and of course, the first time you do anything is going to be a whole lot worse than what ultimately you could end up achieving as you gain more experience. Now, we are getting close to 3 years after the fact here, and not only have I had the opportunity to run this car a whole lot more, but we've also had the benefit of having many other cars since come into Assetto Corsa that are quite like this one. Of course, in 2017, we also got the Ferrari SF70H, which was at the time the absolute latest works Ferrari Formula One car, which was astonishing to get in Assetto Corsa in its own right, but it also gave us another benchmark by which to measure the performance of cars like this, in particular this one, Formula Hybrid 2017. And to be honest, I found that this particular car had more good points to it than the SF70H in many respects, although it is really not a fair comparison to make, considering that Race Sim Studio had to do a lot of guesswork, very informed guesswork, but guesswork nonetheless, in designing this car and releasing it to all of us. So given the limited data that they had to work off of, they did an absolutely tremendous job, and in many respects, I still rate this car more highly than the SF70H, which Kunos put together using actual data from Ferrari. So hats off again to Race Sim Studio. But now, in 2019, having had the benefit of driving this car more, having had the benefit of the SF70H, and then Formula Hybrids 2018 and 2019 to follow from Race Sim Studio, we now have a whole lot more context and a whole lot more experience to draw from by which to return to a car like this one and see what the difference now is today. Let's take a look. Right, so now we pick this up on our out lap, and our fastest lap in this session happened to be lap 2, which was our first flying lap. So coming down to the end of the lap, just as we did 2.5 years ago through the final corner, you will notice that Assetto Corsa nowadays looks a bit different than it did in 2017, as now I have the benefit of running the shaders patch through Content Manager, and it really dresses this game up aesthetically as well as physically a little bit. Also, Race Sim Studio did update this car a couple of times since its initial 2017 March release. However, we now begin this lap. We're using as near as I possibly can get to the conditions that I had on the day. I did not document what they were, but we're running 10 degrees C, ambient and calm winds. Coming down now, 324 kilometers an hour is our top speed there. Coming through turn 2, far more aggressive on the throttle and a little bit more aggressive using all the road. A little bit of a lift still for turn 3, though. It's still not quite flat out, even now with more experience. Turn 4, throw the car in, and then on the throttle a whole lot faster in third gear rather than fourth. Coming down through turns 5. Now, still a lot of understeer there, but picking up the throttle more quickly and then powering it down to the bottom of the circuit there in the 7th gear through turns 6 and 7. More curve, a little bit more aggressive there. Turn 8, flat on the turn in, a little bit of a confidence lift at the apex on DRS in 7th gear and now 8th. We were in 6th gear at the apex there last time. Into the big stop toward the end of the lap, throw it into the corner, get on the power, let the traction sort itself out. The tires are big enough. Coming into the final sector of the lap now. This corner still tricky, using more of that AstroTurf on the outside. First apex there of the chicane. Coming down to the second and third elements, a little bit wide of the penultimate apex curving there, but now launch it through the final corner at full throttle. Trust the tire and trust the downforce across the line. We now do a 119.078, having 2.5 years more time to play with this car. So there it is in front of you. In 2017, on my first ever shakedown in this car, the best lap that I could do on that day was a 126.150. That would be a slow time even in 2014, 2015, never mind 2017. So definitely well off the boil then. Now, with 2.5 years more experience, with having had the benefit of driving the SF70H and Formula Hybrids 2018 and 2019, we found a whole bunch of time, 119.078. Now, of course, as I mentioned, I don't know exactly what conditions on which I ran that shakedown run 2.5 years ago. However, my best guess, knowing that the content manager didn't come out yet, knowing that the shaders patch didn't come out yet, I know the default vanilla Assetto Corsa lowest temperature that I could have run was 10 degrees Celsius, so I assumed that that is what I was doing, and just of course looking at the original video, knowing that it was sunny, relatively calm winds I would assume, so again, that's just how we came up with that. There have been no mods done to the track surface. I know that Catalunya had been resurfaced for the 2018 event, so that would have lowered lap times even farther. That did not happen for us in Assetto Corsa, so still running on the same track surface and the same track condition as well, 100% totally rubbered in for optimum grip. So that's what we had to play with, and that's what I loaded up for this later run. So there you go. That is the difference that 2.5 years of practice and experience can make. 126.150 in 2017 versus a 119.078 in 2019. With the same car, the softest possible tires loaded for both times. The only difference is me having a whole lot more practice involved. I'll leave you with a side-by-side onboard comparison from both of these laps. The 2017 lap is going to be on the right-hand side of the screen, just so you can get everything straight in your mind. Until next time, I hope that this was interesting and maybe even a little informative for you. Ferrari Man 601 saying thank you very much for watching, and of course, we will see you soon.